Hello and welcome to the Toffee Blues match reaction to Everton's 1-0 loss away at home to Watford. Uh, it takes a lot to talk about Everton on the best of days lately, so you'll have to excuse me for being a bit under the weather. That's Everton's third loss on the bounce and our 12th Premier League loss this season. And while Liverpool gear up to play Bayern Munich and Manchester United gear up to play Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League, we've got a 17-day break before Cardiff away. um, Obviously, in the lead up to the Watford game, you look at the narrative of it's Marco Silva's return to Vicarage Road, his first time since being appointed Everton manager after formerly being sacked by Watford. So to me personally, that my opinion, that means any tactical switches or formational changes that Marco Silva makes, if it blows up it blows up in his face and it's on him. So I feel like this, obviously it didn't work. I think a change that he made, of which a lot of fans disagree with, the 4-3-3, which played against Manchester City 3 days earlier, which permitted we were beaten, but it was a much better performance. He switched that up rather unnecessarily. He's gone for an overload of central midfielders in the middle. He's gone for a 4-4-2 with a narrow diamond. You've got Gylfi Sigurdsson, Andre Gomez, Idrissa Gueye and Tom Davies. And while I do believe Tom Davies and Andre Gomez and Idrissa Gueye have proved that they can play in tangent, I don't think that's the case for Gylfi Sigurdsson and Tom Davies. Davies showed a lot of attacking promise against Manchester City and looked like in that role he had where Gueye was sitting deep, he could express himself in terms of his attacking capabilities. That looked the complete opposite against Watford. His weight of pass was heavy going forward, and it certainly did no favours to Richarlison and Tosin up front, particularly in the first half. The first half, like Troy Deeney said before the game, Watford's ambitions were to kick the shit out of Everton, and it was a really physical contest. From a Watford perspective, that approach doesn't surprise me. Coming up against your former boss, your former coach, you'll have a point to prove, and you'll have a chip on your shoulder. And in the physical battles that pursued between Michael Keane and Troy Deeney and Holebas and Richarlison, I feel like the Watford players certainly had the better of us. Jordan Pickford was called into action, made a fantastic save off the top of his head from Etienne Capoue, but that's no substitute to that if you don't cause problems down the other end. I think our two best chances of the half came from a Kurt Zouma header, which wasn't much trouble to Ben Foster, and a Cenk Tosun effort, which was forced from a Watford mistake, which he should have done better with. That was the story of the first half. The match-winning moment come from second half substitute Andre Gregg, who the stories off the pitch and injury problems aside, I've always rated him as a centre forward, particularly during his time at Burnley. He hasn't scored in a while, and leave that to Everton to get him back amongst winning goal scoring ways. A huge disappointment for Evertonians, and it will continue to be so if it continues to happen. Is that the goal come ultimately from a corner, another set piece, which we just seemed inept at defending. There was a fantastic touch by a Watford player which just took out our two lines of defence, which it wasn't much that we could do about. But in terms of the passage of play leading up to that, we need to be able to deal with getting the ball out and hitting them on the counter, which looked beyond us during this game. It is a really disappointing result, to be honest, because coming into the game, Watford at 8th on 34 points, we're 9th on 33 points. The Premier League's competitive. Every difference in merit payment is useful. It's a competitive business, and I wish we would have took that approach to the likes of the Wolves at home game and Watford away, who are in and amongst us in this, slugging it out for 7th place. Obviously, you've got in the conclusion of the game as well, Kurt Zuma receiving a red card for dissent. I've seen the footage of him going up to the referee, but still, no excuses. The game's finished, and give it, some of the refereeing decisions that we've been on the end of this season. As an Everton player, it wouldn't surprise me to get sent off because some of these refereeing decisions so far this season just seem to beg a belief. But yeah, really disappointing day in the office as a whole, and as I say, 17 days now of reflection, with a really tough run of fixtures coming in the March and April, particularly at home. On the 3rd of March, we got Liverpool. 17th of March, we got Chelsea. 30th of March, we've got West Ham. 6th of April, Arsenal. 20th of April, Manchester United. And considering that we've dropped points against those that are in and around us, such as Leicester, such as Wolves, such as Watford, I think to change the perception of how Marco Silva's being perceived at Everton now, it's got to be, we've got to claim some scalps. We've got to be taking points away from these top 6 sides at home and recovering that bear pit mentality that Goodison once have, because a lot of us know that once the identity problem starts creeping into the picture again, once we're not finding the right forward passes, once we're not making any runs off the ball, the Goodison crowd will get on top of not only the team but the manager, and that produces a very toxic atmosphere, of which we found out last season under Ronald Koeman and under Sam Allardyce. I still currently feel that it's not as bad as it was under Koeman, and it's not as bad as what it was under Allardyce. I don't think it's a crisis by any measure. What's he had? He's had 2 transfer windows, one of which he couldn't spend in due to financial restraint. The players that he has brought in have played considerably well this season, and I do feel like it's just a matter of Everton haven't got strength in depth. Obviously, that's an issue that will resolve itself over time, but in the remainder of this season, and just to conclude the video, I think now Everton Football Club should place a clear emphasis on getting the young lads in the squad as much Premier League game time as possible. It's great to see John Joe Kenny and Tom Davies getting these prolonged runs in the side, and I think we're seeing the fruits of that by seeing the improved performances. But a huge one for me now is give Dominic Calvert-Lewin a run. None of our strikers, or makeshift strikers in that case, seem to be grasping the challenge with both hands, and I feel like when he has been called upon, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's probably give the best account of himself, and he turned in a few goals. So obviously 17 days now to recalibrate and assess what we're looking for the remainder of this season and heading into next season. So yeah, that's been the Toffee Blues match reaction video for Everton's 1-0 loss away at home to Watford. And disappointing, but as I say, by the way this season's going, you can't be too surprised. Make sure to subscribe to the Toffee Blues across the social media platforms, and thanks for watching.